Welcome to All Classic Car, and here a collection of classic Fiats. And to begin with, we have a very fruity looking 1966 Fiat Abarth prepared by Middlebarton Garage, bit of a specialist with the Fiat Abarths. Great looking car. This was at Race Retro, I believe. Car number 2, we're over in Portugal for this one. This was quite a few years ago, I think about 2007, the 124 saloon, the four-door saloon that later went on to be built as the Lada over in Russia, but I think this is one of the original Fiats. Next up, a rear low-down three-quarter view of an Abarth tuned Fiat 500. That looks fantastic. Next up, back to the NEC, the classic car show at the NEC, GBM 519Y, that's a Fiat 127, a 1050 CL from 1983. This collection is mainly of post-war cars, post-war Fiats, with just the odd vintage example, including this. This is the Beast of Turin, the S76. The original car was built in 1910, and this is a recreation built in slightly more recent times, mainly from original parts. What an incredible car that was. WGD 795G, that's a Vignale built Fiat Gamine. These were based on the Fiat 500 but look nothing like the donor vehicle. This was at Alton Park, and many Topolinos donated their bodies when they got to the end of their life and were used for stock cars, as is the case here. You can just about make out the shape of a Fiat Topolino body shell there, and I think the car next door as well. Okay, back to one of the Fiat Club stands, and we've got a pair of Fiat X19s here. This is an F-Reg car. That's quite a late one. That's about 1988 or thereabouts. Much bigger bumpers on the later cars. We'll see examples of the earlier slim bumper cars a little bit later. Now to Tatton Park. This was a classic car show held there in the mid-2000s. We've got a really nice car. This is a Fiat 850 Coupe. That's a G-Reg car from late 68 or early 1969. What a pretty car that is. A side-on view now of an Abarth 595. You can see the boot lid, or rather the engine cover at the back, propped open. That was a common thing with the Abarths, just to sort of help them cool a little bit more. I do like those wheels as well. Top Gear fans of a few years ago will recognise this stretched Fiat Panda. This is on display at Beaulieu, the National Motor Museum. This was Jeremy Clarkson's car. It's been modified with bench seating now, halfway along the body. Originally it was just bodywork all the way through. Now to Goodwood Revival, a few years ago they had this up for auction in the Bonhams auction, a Fiat Bartoletti Transporter, used by teams such as Maserati and Shelby American, and it also featured in the film Le Mans. What a cracking thing that is, sold for £402,000 in 2018. Now a front-on view of a classic Fiat 500. That's a G-Reg car, so that series ran from August 68 to July of 1969. Here's a four-door saloon, the Fiat 128. Used to see these all the time, but hardly ever see them now. So when I saw this one at the NEC a few years ago, I made sure I took several photographs of it. There's a 124 alongside as well. This was at Prescott at La Vie en Bleu a few years ago, a slightly damp Prescott, and we've got an example of the Fiat Dino convertible. What a wonderful car that is, 1967. Ferrari-powered Fiat body. Over in Portugal, we spotted this lineup of slightly dilapidated looking Fiats, 600s, or possibly the Seat built equivalent, built over the border in Spain. It could be Fiat or it could be Seat, but it's still a Fiat design, whatever. Talking of Fiat 600s, here's a very shiny example we spotted in Shropshire not that long ago. This is on a D-Reg, so 1966. Right-hand drive as well. Another example here of the Fiat 124 Spider. There's a Panda alongside it as well. Very sharp looking car indeed. One of these or an MGB, which one would you go for? Let me know in the comments if any of these Fiats float your boat. There's an oddball one. The Fiat 127s were fairly common, but the 127 Sport wasn't all that common a sight, at least here in the UK as far as I remember. Carry on with these classic Fiats. We have a pre-war car here. I'm guessing this is a Fiat 501 of the mid to late 1920s, but let me know. This was at a Prescott Hill Climb meeting. Somewhat newer is this M-Reg Fiat Panda. Quite a cheerful little design these were as well. It was also built as the Seat Marbella, if I remember correctly. Down at the Cotswold Motor Museum, down at Bourton-on-the-Water, is this Fiat Topolino. Really nice little car indeed. The original Fiat 500 Topolino, surrounded by many, many garage signs and other classic car memorabilia. What a great place. Now this was for sale. I think this was last year at Capesthorne Hall. This is a 124 Sport Coupe from 1969. A very sharp looking car indeed, I thought. There's a rear three-quarter view of the same car, a two-door coupe. Really sharp lines, great looking car, left-hand drive. Those Chromodora alley wheels perhaps. Something will let me know, I'm sure. A gaggle of Fiat 500s. This was at one of the Sywell meetings just a few years ago. All manner of different colours there. Great lineup of old Fiats. Slightly more recent is this A-Reg car. This is a Fiat Argenta. Survivors of these here in the UK must be very thin on the ground. These were built from 1981 to 1985. It was basically an updated version of the 132. This is a facelift car. Now, down to the Pageant of Power. This was held at Cholmondeley Castle, and this is a 500 special saloon, built with racing in mind along the lines of the race cars built in the 1970s. This one's Swift Tune powered. Back to Capesthorne Hall, and we've got a Series 1 Fiat Uno Turbo here in the foreground with a very appropriate registration number, and there's a facelifted example just peeking into the background too. There's a rear three-quarter view of the same car. Very sharp lines, very, very few of these have survived. Back to slightly older Fiats, and this was on the Hero Challenge Rally earlier this year, 2022. It's a 124 Spider. It's a later car with the safety bumpers, the rubber inserts on the bumpers. They started looking a bit chunky by this point in time. And the 124 Sport Coupe here, the twin headlamp either side version. I remember having my collar felt gently by an officer of the law when I was a kid, playing in an abandoned one of these in a local car park. Abandoned cars were quite common back in the 1970s. And here we've got the Fiat Coupe, a modern classic, I guess you would call this one, on a K plate. This is the Type 175. These were built from 1993 through to about 2000. 1.8 or 2 litre engines, including the turbo option. And slightly derelict, there's another one of those Fiat or Seat 600s. This one looks like it's been picked up by the roof with a chain through the doors, so I don't see this one going anywhere again. Looking a little bit sorry for itself. And also in Portugal is this red Fiat Panda. This was photographed, I think, in 2007. So what's that, 15 years ago? Is it still on the road, I wonder? Looking a little bit faded even then. Here's a Bobby Dazzler. This is the facelifted version of the Fiat Topolino. Handily, there's some information on the front there. 1954 Fiat 500c Topolino. 570cc and 17 brake horsepower. Fantastic. And there's a rear three-quarter view. Topolino with little mouse in Italian. I do love the fold-back roofs on these. Really nice little cars. I do find myself being drawn to these small cars now, I must admit. There's an older photo, but quite a rare subject. That's the original Fiat Multipla, little people carrier. What a great little car that is. Just don't have a shunt in one, because there's not much in front of you. Got a Abarth prepared 124 Spider here. That's driven by Peter Raven and Mick Wood, according to the names on the front wing there. This was a race retro a few years ago. There's a standard Fiat 500 in the background. Back to the 600. This is a 1964 example. It's a right-hand drive Fiat 600. It's a Triumph TR6, Morris Minor, and an MGB also in shot. This is a really rare sight in this country. This is the 128 Coupe SL. These were only built from 1971 to 1975 and rotted like crazy. So how any of these survived in this country is just, it's just incredible really. It's a right-hand drive car, so I'm assuming it's always been here. This one's on an end plate, so that's late 1974, early 1975. Like I say, these were only built until 1975. Rare, rare car. Fiat 126 is here. We've got a matching pair here almost, non-original wheels I suspect. What a cracking little car that is. And here's a closer look at the car that was parked alongside it on an F plate. Quite a late example, and it's got the full hatchback. The earlier 126s, if I remember right, just had an opening, sort of boot lid almost below the back window, but the later cars had the full hatch, as is demonstrated with this red example. Talking of red, we're back at the NEC Classic Car Show and the lovely little Topolino DHU 707. OKJ149F is a Fiat 124 Sport Coupe. Got two photos of this one, looks like gently race prepared. There's a rollover cage in there, bucket seats and so on. This was quite a few years ago. I think one of the Alton Park Gold Cups we saw this particular car, single headlamp model. Looks really nice on those wheels. Where is it now? If you can fill in any of the gaps in history for any of these cars, please pop a note into the comments. It's always fun to read what you think about these cars. Now, two photos of a wonderful Fiat 130 Coupe, a six-cylinder car. The 130, the saloon, was built from 1969 through to 1977. The 130 Coupe, as shown here, was introduced in 1971 and continued all the way through until the end in 77. And just under 4,500 were built. I do love the lines, the shape of the side of the rear wings there, that back panel with a little crease at the top. Yeah, I think that's just a handsome, handsome car. A couple of Fiat X19s here on the X19 Owners Club stand at the NEC, the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham, where many of the really large classic car shows take place. To Tatton Park in the mid-2000s, another example of the little Gamine, the Vignale built Fiat Gamine, based on the 500. This one on a J registration, circa 1970 or thereabouts. Two photos now of a rally-prepared Fiat 131 Mirafiori. These were built from 74 to 84. Now, is this one of the 131 Abarth rally cars? I suspect it probably is. Around 400 of these were built. There's a rear view of the same car, also at Race Retro, but a different year. The wider arches, the so on, all the little mods are signs that this is probably an original Abarth modified car. I haven't got many photos of 131s. There's a selection of 4 cars seen quite a few years ago, in the early 2000s these were. I think these were all at Goodwood actually. I do like the little Topolino at the bottom left though, little brown car. Race prepared, and they've got a Multipla as well. Now, Fiat 500, but this is the Giardiniera Estate. I hope I got that right, the estate car version of the Fiat 500. What a bonny little car that is. Back to the NEC and D520 MVS. That's quite a rare survivor, the Fiat Strada, the Abarth 130 TC version, alloy wheels, uprated engine, bit of a goer, rival to the Golf GTI and the Escort XR3i back in the day, of course. There's a rear three-quarter view, wheel arch extensions, fancy alloy wheels, big exhaust and a rubber spoiler on the boot lid there. Yeah, really rare survivor now. Another one of the 124 Sport Coupes here. This is a G-plate car, so late 1968 or early 1969. There's a bit of an oddball version of the 126. This is the 126 Jolly. Still plenty of these classic Fiat photos to come. Back to Portugal, and the quad headlamp setup on this one makes me think it's a 124 Special, a Fiat 124 Special, or possibly again a Seat built version. 1.4 litre overhead valve engine, slightly upgraded version of the 124 we saw before now, 635 YUK. This is a 1958 Fiat Abarth Coupe, a 750 Abarth. What a cracking little car that is. Somewhat more pedestrian is this very clean M-Reg Fiat Panda. A brace of Fiat 500s here at a classic car show just a few years ago. Which car would you prefer, the yellow example in the foreground or the red one in the background? Both with opening roofs, of course, the one in the foreground on a K-plate and the one bit in the background slightly later on an L. BOC 356B, that's a Fiat 1500 Cabriolet, registered in 1964. This one's popped up at several classic car shows we've been to over the years. What a handsome car that is. Really, really smart indeed. Back to Portugal, and we were driving along and screeched to a halt when we saw this gaggle of cars seemingly up for sale and a bit of a lean-to behind the fence. Got a Fiat Topolino here, nice early one with the separate headlamps, really nice. There's a Renault Dauphine and a Tractionable alongside. Now, this is one we spotted again. This is one we were just driving along. This was in Nantwich, I think it was. Quite a rare survivor indeed. PHJ 114E. That's an 850 Sports Spider Series 1. It's a Bertone bodied car. Quite an elegant little car indeed. 1967, like I say, rear engine. You can see the cooling slats on the rear panel there. Nice, nice car. I've not seen it before or since. So maybe it was just passing through. Back to the Hero Challenge Rally 2022. If you've not seen the video on that one, please look that one out because there was some good car action taking place there. And we've got an N-Reg Fiat 124 Spider here. Yeah, there were some cracking cars taking part in that rally. Back to the NEC, and we've got a facelifted version of the Fiat Uno Turbo IE. This one a G-plater from about 1989. Over in Portugal, 2007 I think this was, and we've got a van version, a rare van version of the Fiat 127. I wonder if that's still going. Like I say, this was 2007, so 15 years ago. Is it still around, or is it propping up something else in the scrapyard now? Certainly the climate should be fairly kind to it, so there's a good chance it's still around. Probably a little bit more faded than it is here. This was in Amarante. Another example of the Giardiniera, the estate car version of the Fiat 500. Still quite a few old Fiats to come, fear not. And here, this was spotted in the market square at St Mary Glisse in northern France, the Multipla. Quite a wacky looking car. Later versions were not quite so eye-catching, but these surely are a classic of the future. As is this already, this camper van Fiat. How cool is that, from the early 1980s? What a great way to pop along to any classic car show. Brewing facilities, you can always hide in it if it starts raining. What a great thing that is. This I think we saw at Brooklyn, CXF 745 in 1936, Fiat 508, the Balilla. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. Apologies if I've got that wrong, but yeah, from 1936. A slightly derelict, slightly sad looking Fiat, or Seat 600. Just look how it's rotted away beneath where the rear window would have been. You can just see that through the side windows there, in a terrible state. You'd have thought the warm climate would have actually suited these cars, but apparently not. And here, a Y-Reg Fiat X19 with the huge bumpers. Shortly we'll see a photo of an earlier car with the much slimmer bumpers to look a lot easier on the eye, I think. Now to Tatton Park in the mid-2000s, and a couple of photos of another Fiat Abarth Strada, the 130 TC. This one was registered in May of 1987. Just had a quick look at this one online. It's currently sawned, so off the road. And the MOT, the last MOT was back in June 2012, so 10 years this car has been off the road. Is it still around? Is it just sat quietly in someone's garage somewhere? Maybe it's off racing somewhere and no longer used on the road, who knows? Anyway, here's another Fiat Abarth 595 showing off its engine installation, fruity looking exhaust. Great little car. This is a rarity again. This was at Tatton Park many years ago, a Fiat 127 Palio. Many stickers, extra lamps, yellow headlights, full opening sunroof even. And was the Palio a limited edition or a sporty version? Someone please let me know. Now, SXP 154, that's one of the facelifted Fiat Topolinos. This one dates to 1956. This is sawned as well. So what's the current status of this car? I'd be really interested to know. Now down to Sywell again, and we've got a somewhat modified, drag racing prepared Fiat 126. Slightly bonkers looking car that is. Back to the NEC and a very modified Fiat Abarth. I'm assuming there's a radiator in that huge sort of assembly on the front end there, piped through to the rear engine. That's my guess, but if you can sort of fill me in a bit on what's actually in that extension on the front there, that'd be great. And the Fiat X19 here, there's a B-Reg car, so about 1984 or thereabouts. One of the VS limited editions. Different wheels, two-tone paint, I believe. Mid-engine, you can see the big cover of the engine edges behind the rear window. Another slightly derelict Fiat 600. I wonder if any of these were rescued. And there's an equally dilapidated looking Morris Minor alongside it. You don't see many of those in Portugal. Now here we go, here's an early-ish example of the X19, quite a crisp, sharp-looking car, much smaller bumpers, and I think that looks really nice. This one is still taxed. It was first put on the road in December of 1979. Really sharp, crisp design, I think. Another sort of Series 1 version of the Fiat Uno Turbo IE, Fiat's hot hatch offering of the 1980s. Another Fiat 124 Spider here, Pininfarina badge on the bonnet there. V-Reg is quite a late example, so what's that, about 79? Really nice car, left-hand drive. I think they were all left-hand drive, in fact. And the gaggle of cars here, we've got a fairly early Fiat 127 at the top left, and a neighbour of mine, my mate's mum, had a new one of those, a yellow one. There's a modified X19, and a 500 and a 124. Quite a gaggle there. Another one of the 124 Coupes, a sort of quad headlamp version, a K-Reg car, so that's what, 1971. This was at the Tatton Park Classic Car Show in the early 2000s, going back quite a way now with some of these photos. Another Uno Turbo. And this was at Sywell, but on a different year. Another lineup of Fiat 500s. On a very damp, rainy day in not very sunny Shropshire, we spotted this a few years ago, 1965 Fiat 1500 Cabriolet. Really smart car indeed. Such great lines, not fussy, just elegant. There's a rear three-quarter view of the same car. A gaggle of other classic cars parked up in the background there. There's a very modified Abarth tuned Fiat X19 Prototipo. It says on the side and on the front, and there's one of those periscope air intakes just above the roof there on top of the engine cover. If you could tell me a bit more about this particular car in the comments, that would be great. Another 124 Spider here. And another one of these rare little Fiat Coupes, the SL Coupe. Down to Goodwood Revival on one of the setup days. I think we got 1967 Giardiniera van. Great little runabout. Did this start out as an estate and converted into a van, or has it been the van from new? Maybe somebody knows. Another Balilla of the, apologies for my pronunciation once again, of the mid to late 1930s, the 508 Fiat. This was at the Malvern Classic Car Show in 2022. If you've not seen the video of that particular show, please check that one out. There were some fantastic cars there, including this lovely 124 Spider on a J plate. Nice slim chrome bumpers on this particular car, left-hand drive, as they all were. This was at a gathering we went to, a breakfast meeting. You don't see these too often, the Fiat Punto Sporting. I had hoped to include photos of the little Cinquecento Sporting as well, but I just couldn't lay my hands on any photos, unfortunately. Now down to the Haynes Motor Museum. We've got a pair of Fiats here, and in the foreground one of the facelifted Fiat 500 Topolinos. Really smart car in dark blue. There's a 600 alongside it. Getting towards the end of this collection of classic Fiats. Now we've got a G-Reg Fiat 850. This is a very rare sight. This was in the overflow car park at one of the Cholmondeley Castle classic car shows a little while ago. This one in maroon. I did a quick check-up on this one, and it shows a SORN, so statutory off-road notification, i.e. not road taxed at the moment. This one was put on the road in March of 1969. Hopefully it'll be back on the road before too long. And finally, another example of the late edition Fiat X19 two-seater mid-engine sports car. And that rounds off this collection of over 105 photographs of classic, mainly post-war Fiats. I hope that was of interest. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts on the cars that feature in this particular video. Have a look around the rest of the channel at the several hundred videos that are on here now, and there'll be more videos along very, very soon. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.